And then the Geshe one Rajama Yanda, Zobe Sanjere Badashan, the Horesha one Jiden Jama Jivan, Kalo Jivan Lana Melvan Hadam Melanjet, Sanjay Jumden, the Begawa Shajadu, Chazelo Judo, Jazu Jewan, the Mahajumden, the Geshe one Rajama Yanda Zobe, Ribada Shazun, the Horesha one Jiden Jama Jivan. Kalo Jivan Lana Melvan Hadam Melanjet. Sanjay Jumden, the Begawa Shajadu, Chaz. Chodo Jazu Jewan, the Jumden, the Geshe one Rajam. Yanda Zobe Sanjay Ribada Shazun, the Horesha. Jidin Jamba Jivan, the Kalo Jivan Lana Melvan. Sada Melanjet, the Sanjay Jumden, the Begawa Shajadu. Chazelo Chodo Jazu Jeo, Kanze Ganya Jazum. Sajen de no combat dimbron de Nanin Jiden de Nachoja. Tezekeva Jona Cha, Jalo Nanda Pongajo do Sunda. Ijeja Sejen Gombo, Chaban Jiden Sunda. Gombo Juni Jona Cha, Senjo de Mochimenda. Sendon Rawa Jona Cha, Zenon de Regent Sebason. Yame Jinjen Jona Cha, Gombo to Jidin. Tamje Tembe, Dembabo, Sonam Yende. The Jinja Lacha, the Motaben de Chacha, giving us on the Chido Television. Shinjujo Lacha, the Trinity Ramaya, Lavata Lara, the Ne, Shingetamba Yuden, Ginduna Yacha, the Wachian Visions, give up a zone of Jarangi Sinde, then a Sanje Damba Yakarma Rabri Mama, Jumazeva, Sugar, the Melamota Jinda, the Jeshan, the Drata, Sonam de Yetam Jessica. Commander Nejin, the Gadana, the Shiva Locture, Siva Zon and Joe, and Joe show.
To the teacher, the blessed one, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened, perfecting knowledge and good conduct, so that in all of the world, supreme guide of things be attained, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror. To subdue from the Shakya clan, I prostrate my offerings and for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, so that in all of the world, supreme guide of beings be attained, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror. Subdue from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfectly, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, so that in all of the world, supreme guide of beings be attained, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror. Subdue from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When I scream among humans, you were born on this earth. You paced out 7 strides, then said, I am screaming sword. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies formed, screaming pure, wisdom motion like golden mountain, flame that blazes in the 3 worlds, we know your best, to you I prostrate. With the spring signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Teacher having all understanding, the field made with qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one gone to darkness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the reverence, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated in course or short path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community authentic virtue I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Star, mirage, and flame of the lamp, an illusion, trouble, to or above, a dream, a flash of light in a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain their goal seen, subdue the forward force, and be delivered from the ocean of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death.
Sanje Jala Zoja Jala Ma Chanju Bado Dane Jazo Dagin Jezo Jebe Sonam Je Rola Penja Sanje Rupa Sanje Jala Zoja Jala Ma Chanju Bado Dane Jazo Dagin Jezo Jebe Sonam Je Rola Penja Sanje Rupa Sanje Jala Zoja Jala Ma Chanju Bado Dane Jazo Dagin Jezo Jebe Sonam Je Rola Penja Sanje Rupa Risho.
I go for refuge and fly enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create, I practice in giving and other perfections. May I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge and fly enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create, I practice in giving and other perfections. May I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge and fly enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create, practice in giving and other perfections. May I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Kede Pumba Dayana, Jadan Jiva Jano Juro, Kede Pumba Nanaji, Pumba Sinji, Danyu Yuva Mayana, Davi Yuva Kana, Dadan Davi Shiva Jiro, Manjimanya Zimeka, Ten Yuva Mayade, Manjimanya Zimeka, Kangaton, Nala Jiranya Dana, Dadan Davi Yawan Bagaji. Tezebene Javase, Ledan Yumaseva, Ledan Yumanamdor, Tedajun, Jovan, Tomani, and Gabo, Dawashi, Damish, Sanjanam, Dadan, Tameka, Meche, and Jebra Chawan, the Simji Juyen, Majaba, the Manga, Chuni, and the Tamja Yanda, 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 Mimi, and the Metin, Sanja, the Shenish, Mishiva, the Jovan, the Jumadu, Namdon, the Metin, in the senior to come out in the country, in the reciting. Tele Shamba, my agent, the Jishim, Sanji Jim, Venom, the Damba, the Tunjumania, Cheva Mania, the Zanja, the Seven. Ransanji, Jin, the Damba Mela, the J, and other Shua, the Shish over the Joji, Kangia, the Zenia, the Dawa, the Jabba, the Mission, the Kodam, Charles, and maybe I'll just read from here. 151. We respond that, although it is just as you say with regard to the cessation, since there is not even the slightest things whose essence, not even slightest things whose essence in the elimination of suffering. Now this is a little bit, although it is just in regard to cessation, since there is not even the slightest things whose essence is the elimination of suffering.
What is stanza are you?
So, after stanza 8.
Yeah, it's still part of stanza ending. Yeah, this kind of, so in Tibetan, when I read the three yinji, Gobalane Dungen Dobe, Mubu Dungen Dobe, Mubu Pasan Mebo, Gobashi, Musum the Kalajurus. So when I read in Tibetan, it sounds like Gopalanes, Gopal, the cessations, so the individual, who directly kind of, experiencing the cessations. So the individual who directly experiences the cessations and does not have any slightest, kind of slightest notion of any suffering that he has ceased as some kind of returning, even the slightest suffering that's, the cessation and the cessation of the suffering, right? The cessation of the suffering. So which means suffering has ceased to existing. Now this individual is directly experiencing the end of the suffering or the cessation of the suffering. So in that, in that point of view or in that phase, the wisdom that is directly experiencing the cessation of suffering, there's no slightest any form of coming back of any, any sign or any condition coming back of the suffering that he has ceased. So, because in typical dogmas, in Tibetan words, so dogma means some kind of, it can use many times, like for example, so is reversing is a dogma, and things that you have, refute or prevent, it is also dogma. So now this the line is actually commenting on that. The question is now from the beginning. The question is how it is possible, cessation can be directly experienced. Questions like that: how it is possible cessation can be directly experienced, since the cessation itself, there's nothing to conceive, nothing knowable object in there. So how can you say the cessation of the suffering is directly experienced by the consciousness? And then this is the one of the lines saying that in that phase of directly experience of the cessations, there is no any form or any sign of, the suffering has some kind of, the sign of coming back or has returned back or has kind of prevented, because it's totally, the wisdom that is direct experience cessation is, totally absorbing in that cessation, emptiness. So there is this person saying, for example, when you look in the space, in the whole space, and there's nothing to see in it, there's nothing to see. There's no any sign of any obstructive phenomena flying or coming, right, returning. So there's nothing to see. When there's nothing, in what sense you think, consciousness can directly experience the cessation? So usually direct experience means I am seeing this color, I'm this scene. This is what we call the direct experience. And another direct experience through the meditations. Now, before you have, you are not familiarized with meditations, you may use the imaginations, right? You may use the imaginations and you're conceptualizing and then continuously contemplating and meditating. And it is possible mind can be, perceiving some kind of, the object without any conceptualizations, without going through any imagination. You can directly experience. So that, for example, directly experience the impermanent, directly experience the conditional suffering. So this makes sense because impermanence has some kind of characteristics there. There's something to conceive, something to imagine, something to comment on it. So when it comes to the emptiness, And nirvana that you see in emptiness, what is there to conceive? What is there to imagine? And when there is nothing to conceive and imagine, how can that be direct experience? So, and Chandrakirti also saying that if this was explained if you explain according to the Siddhantika school, and Siddhantika school, in their tradition, or their, philosophical traditions, there's Siddhantika school says when you can have direct experience of color, but color, direct experience is always referring to the subject side, consciousness. You cannot say the eye consciousness directly experience the color, but you cannot say the color is direct experience, because there is no experience in the color. So the so this is what in their traditions they say that. So in that kind of with that understanding, with that philosophical tradition, and they challenging that, how can you say the cessation can be directly experienced?
So we say for them, what would be the definition of direct experience? For them, what would be the definition of, what do they mean then? What do they mean by direct experience?
So there says, in the language we say, I have directly experienced impermanent. They can say, yes, this is possible. I can directly experience the greenness of the leaf. I can directly experience the coldness or heat. So there's some kind of, each of those objects has their own characters to identify, to represent. So with that, you can say direct experience. When there is no character in it, and that it is really hard to say, or almost according to the Siddhantika school, it is impossible to say you have directly experienced cessation of the suffering.
That is what I don't understand. Why not? When I have it to say,
because the cessation has,
I experience.
Cessations is not comes to the mind with any aspect, any characters. So the emptiness has no characteristics, no aspect, no form. So this is the saying. So when you say through the consciousness experiencing or directly the cessation of the suffering. So, and then what is the cessation of the suffering? Directly experience. So you can say, I have seen this, the airplane directly experience, and then the airplane is left. So no airplane is, how can you say, I also experience no airplane. You can say, I can experience the airplane. I can see the airplane. But you cannot say, I'm seeing no airplane. Because to see something, it has to have its own, the character. This has some kind of position there. This is Siddhantika school. Siddhantika school, they say. So they kind of, and then if you ask question, and when you ask the question to Siddhantika school, and how do you think? Don't you believe the Arhat has experienced the cessation? And Siddhantika says, yes, they have attained the nirvana, therefore they experience the cessation of suffering. But it is indirectly. So the emptiness of I of the person is experience indirectly. What you directly see is you see the aggregates. You see aggregates as something empty or devoid of the self of person. So directly you are looking at the aggregates, and indirectly you understand there is no self of person at all. Just looking at the empty table, you see directly the empty table. Indirectly, you say, if someone asks, is there a spoon on the table? You say, no, I experience. Right. So this is what Sudandaka school is saying. And then, and then said, the Prasangika school saying that the cessation itself can be direct experience. It is experienced directly by the consciousness. And then this is, for example, like as I mentioned earlier, when the cow or the birds are on they are kind of sitting on the land, when they see the land is ended there and the whole space. So they directly experience the space. So that, experience of the space is direct experience. So when they're walking on the bridge, right, and the edges of the bridge, when they come, and they say, oh, there's a space. So they move away from that space. So that at that time, you experience obstructive nature, and you also experience the absence of obstructive nature. So both you have directly experienced. So direct experience is not necessarily something it has its intrinsic property. So, and then also as an example, and the person he was kind of trying to cross from the one village to another village, and then he suddenly see there's a water like the mirage. When he sees the mirage, he's thought this is the water. This is quite a big river there, So can I be able to cross that river or not? And he was thinking how deep that river is. Then he asked someone from that village, and the village man says, there is no water, and something that water like is the mirage. If you don't believe my word, you just go closer to that, and you will directly experience my word. No water will be experienced. So then when the person go closer to that, and he find it's just a mirage, there's no water. So that means he also experienced the word of no water. So now between these two arguments, so what they're trying to figure out is, so Sodandaka thinks if the cessation itself, the space is experienced by the direct consciousness, and so the space has to be, independent. Usually space, everything is intrinsically separate. Space is intrinsically separate from obstructive nature. Obstructive form is also, intrinsically separate from the space. So, so I think that's the, so Prasangika school saying that, you can experience directly only the space, and you can also experience any kind of form of obstructive nature, but you cannot, you cannot have the space that is independent from the obstructive. You cannot have the cessation of suffering that is independent from the suffering or conditional suffering. So conditional suffering continues. You experience through the wisdom, and then you come to the end. Now there's no more suffering at all. So that is direct experience. So, but that does not mean the cessation is independently out there. So your liberation is somewhere just waiting for you. You're trying to go closer to it. It's not like that. It is just conditional suffering that is bondage, the anger and attachment, all these imprints. While with you, there's the bondage. When there's all this bondage removed from you, it disappears in emptiness. Then the cessation of suffering experience. So main argument is, Siddhantika school thinks anything that you experience has some kind of objective property. Like they says, the blue, yellow, orange, there is some kind of objective property there. And through the meditation, when you see the deity or Manjushri, you see. So Siddhantika school thinks that I'm directly seeing the Manjushri, that Manjushri has its own intrinsic property. Otherwise, not intrinsic property, then two things happen. Or either everyone there can see it, or this cannot be, this cannot be directly seen by you, or what you see in the Manjushri is wrong perception. So if not wrong perceptions, is a clear vision, and it's seeing something, so it's not seeing to other people, so it is the intrinsic property. So they say the main meaning is the intrinsic property, anything that intrinsically, so Siddhantika school, space do not have any intrinsic property by itself. Any permanent nature, has no intrinsic property. Imagination of the tree, imaginations of the cup. So they say they don't have any intrinsic property. Similarly, space is also one of them. It is no intrinsic property. Anything that intrinsic property that has no intrinsic property cannot be directly experienced. That has to be experienced indirectly. So this is what Siddhantika is saying. So yeah, I'm going to start here. They're saying that in this we respond that although it is just with regard to the cessations, since there is not even slightest things whose essence in the elimination of suffering. So when I read the Tibetan, a little bit meaning changes. So how could there ever be direct experience that was cognitions of cessations? So this is questions. Cognition of cessations. Cessations, emptiness, space, imaginations have no intrinsic property. So furthermore, given the textual pronouncement, the cognition that suffering is not being created are direct experience. So this is like, Siddhantika school saying, when you generate this wisdom, direct experience of the emptiness, is that emptiness is not really giving birth to the emptiness, you know. So it is impossible for the cognition of such entity that lack the creation to be produced in the manner as a cognition of the something created. Hence, there can be no doubt that which cognition of the cessations would be achieved in the mode of uncreated. Now, this is also very confusing when you read in English. You know. So it's kind of like maybe you can say, but it is not correct to say, you know, wisdom has directly experienced the cessations. But if you say indirectly, then it is, you know, acceptable. You know. So thus, if in accordance with perceived object, the cognition as well is uncreated. So now they're saying, you know, the Chandrakirti is everything is Chandrakirti himself, you know. So he is bringing Sotandika school point of view, and he's editing his own, point of views, you know, everything. Now it said, so in this way, if you think, you know, if it's saying, thus if in accordance with perceived object, the cognition as well is uncreated. So, you know, if you think the cessation is, what is the cessations? And the cessation is, you know, the cessation is no different from, or cessation is experienced within, you know, intrinsically, how's that? In the absence of intrinsically arising of the suffering. The cessation is experienced within the absence of intrinsically arising of the suffering. So then says, and what if the subjected experience is also not, you know, intrinsically arising? And then says, if the subject and object is fit or match, so, and then as it is experiencing, and why can you say it's direct experience? You know, consciousness is not intrinsically arises, and the consciousness that's seeing is unarising of the suffering. You know. So this is kind of, sometimes absorb in emptiness. So absorbing emptiness, if subject is not empty of intrinsic, then there is no consciousness can absorb in emptiness. So then this, once the consciousness is empty of intrinsic existence, and the object that is, you know, directly experienced by the consciousness is also empty of intrinsic existence, then the consciousness seeing that object as it is. So then it is like, the mixing of water and milk. When the milk mixed with water, and inseparable. So that consciousness, the direct experience, the cessation, is become, totally inseparable, that object. So the observe and absorb, right? So observe means you're focusing. Your absorb means you just melted in there. So Chandrakirti is saying, the Arhat's mind that is meditatively equipoised in that emptiness and experience the cessation of suffering is total absorbing, inseparable with that nirvana. But still, again, you say, yes, this is the way. So the consciousness of the arhat, which is meditating on that cessation suffering, is, only, it is only things that experience, only things that perceived, only things that reveals is emptiness. Other than there's no conventional reality in this particular mind. That does not mean that emptiness is independent from all the conventional reality. So sometimes when you drive, your eyes only focus on the road, right? On the road. That does not mean that the road has independently exists. You're just trying to be focused on that, or you're just looking at one part of the car. That part is only that experience, and that does not mean that part is independent nation. Right? So the Siddhantika school, in every time they says, this is directly experienced by this particular mind. This particular mind is independently, selectively choosing this object, to be experiencing. So then they always think, so you say, now this is the independent unit. So now another Chandrakirti's example here is consciousness can experience the emptiness alone, emptiness alone, or even in the mandane's parlance, one calls such type of cognition direct experience. For instance, when this surveying, when surveying from the great distance the country in the region before him, a traveler sees the something as if filled with abundant, pure water, and want to cross it. Yet from his experience, thinking he will not be able to, and being afraid, he asks the farmer comes from that region, just how expensive is this water? How deep that is, how wide it is. Then the farmer may say to him, there is, where is the water? This resemble water, but it is a mirage. If you don't believe my word about it, go there and look. You will directly experience my word. Just as by indicating the absence of water, one says you will directly experience to the traveler, likewise, the world also conventionally in this way. Yeah. So this means there's a possible this person can directly experience once he reach at the area where the mirage is, and he can, directly experience the person's word. No water is experience. So that is called direct experience. No water is not intrinsic property, but relatively existing from the person's saying there's no water. Relatively existing no water become the conventional reality because he thought there is the water. Right. So when you thought, so
why is so important to find if it is direct or indirect experience?
So this is a very good question. So it's very important, Yeah, it is very important. People who is really want to know, so there is possible individual can experience nirvana. That nirvana that you are experiencing is not from, nirvana is to nirvana that experience you're going to experience is not the meaning that you have to end yourself. You don't, there's no necessarily discontinuation of yourself. There's no necessarily that your body has to be totally cease to exist to attain nirvana. So if with this body you can experience the nirvana, and nirvana means to you is not somewhere, it is empty place, empty from, or kind of, divorced from the samsaric activities, samsaric people, samsaric, conditional. Right. Otherwise, when you say, oh, there's the liberations, that you can attain the liberations, and you thought, oh, with what you can attain nirvana, right? So then faith alone is not going to help you to attain nirvana. And then what is the main cause that can lead you to the nirvana is wisdom realizing emptiness. And then the question is how the wisdom realizing emptiness can lead me, or, propel me, somewhere there is no this condition of suffering. Then it says, no, if the wisdom is going to push you or traject you from condition of suffering to the somewhere there's no condition of suffering, which means when the day one you generate the wisdom realizing emptiness, it has some kind of activities of destroying the condition of suffering. So when you realize emptiness, your hand is not working, so your nose is losing, so the air falls. Oh, the wisdom is doing something, So then she said, definitely, this wisdom has power to eliminate the existing of myself. So now the Chandrakirti says, if you imagine in this way nirvana, that is totally wrong perceptions. It's a totally wrong way, to aim at the liberation is not like that. And then the question is, so if nirvana is not necessary, you have to end the condition of suffering. You don't have to be divorced or independent from the condition of suffering. How? How the wisdom is, make you experience the cessation of suffering. So the Nagarjuna point is the suffering, the first, suffering means there's a condition of suffering and the suffering. And many times the suffering is referring to the cause of the suffering, which is afflictive emotion and karma. So anything that is under the influence of karma and afflictive emotions, anything that is still working under that karma and afflictive emotion, that is called conditioned suffering. So now we have to find this by generating wisdom realizing emptiness. How can I free from the influence of the afflictive emotion and karma? So then the afflictive emotion is, due to the grasping of self, a person, and the grasping of self phenomena. So what is the grasping of self phenomena? Or my body, my feeling, my thought, my emotion, my perceptions. So these are the grasping, grasping of self phenomena. So that allows the grasping of self person to find the solid object, to fixate, to obsess with, right? So the wisdom realizing emptiness is directly opposing to the misconceptions, seeing there is body intrinsically. There is feeling that is, the intrinsic property. There's a emotional, there is the perceptions, the intrinsic property. There's some kind of foundation for me to be existing. So visualizing dismantling, there is no intrinsic property of the body. There is no intrinsic property of the feeling. There is no intrinsic property of the perceptions, the thought, and nothing. When there's foundation totally dismantled, and it is impossible for the mind to find, there is I am that existing, solidly, intrinsically. When the basis is destroyed, So there's this can be, while you have all the emotional perceptions, you can dismantle the intrinsic property of that. You can find empty of intrinsic property of the body, empty of intrinsic property of the feeling, empty of intrinsic property of the thought and emotional perceptions. So when you totally convince it with that, reveal that emptiness, and continuously meditating, and once the mind is totally, no doubt, no hesitation, no ambiguity, totally convinced, settled, inseparable with that emptiness. So Nagarjuna says, this is how you attain nirvana. So there is no such nirvana, independent or divorced from your existing. Right? So the wisdom is not destroying any part of your body.
Just the grasping.
Yeah, just the grasping. So in the sutra, there's a Mayana sutra, there's, Buddha mentioned that, how this dualities of the mind is happening. And what is the duality? And how, and what count is dualities? And Buddha says, this is me and this is my body is the dualities. Or this is the, I'm going to abandon the attachments is the duality thought. You think there's something substantial that I'm going to abandon it so I can be free from it. This is the duality mind. So the attachment is not really, independent, intrinsic property that is, causing suffering to you. Therefore, so you have to, against that attachment. You had, against the anger and jealousies. So these, when there is anger, you are inseparable from that anger. When there's the attachment, you are inseparable. You are no different from it. There is no me that different from the anger. There's no me that different from your body. There's no me that different from your emotions. There's no me that different from act of seeing. There's no me that different from the act of listening and smelling and taste and textures. But duality is things, me, seeing. Seeing is different from me. So it's almost like you find yourself as the driver, the main driver on the seat, front seat. And you turn, this is my act of seeing, this is my act of smelling, this is my body, this is my emotions. So that is the duality mind. So the Arhat reach to the point, they say there's no such thing, dualities. So that everything is relatively entangled. Relatively entangled is a relatively entangled, and that existing of the relativity is like an illusion like existence. These has no any substantial property, no intrinsic property. It's just to experience, just to see. And there's no, there's no way you can, touch. There's no way you can, find it has some kind of substantial quality. It's just to see, like, if you are in the audience of the magician and you see all the magician creation that you see, right? If you try to catch it, there's no. It's for you to see, right? So that in the reality conventional world is just to see. If you don't like, their condition is here. You can change. When here change, things change. Right. So this is a very, very important, to detail, going through the detail, trying to understand how, in what way the individual is going to attain the nirvana, and what is the nirvana itself, and where do you see it, Yeah, that's otherwise if just like story like, if you told like story like, and people always imagine nirvana is far from somewhere from the earth, some another planet. So you have to go there, and also think you want to go, but you don't want to die. So it's like that. So I want to go to heaven, but I don't want to die. And heaven is only possible after your death. And you like that, but you don't like that. So there's some kind of, this is, liberations introduced to you through, fictitious, yes. Because you have no capability to understand the nirvana, therefore, you have to tell the story like, cartoon stories. So nirvana is there's no need to change anything, and just to mind, to reveal that emptiness, and not just revealing it, convincing it, not just convincing, and totally absorb, into the emptiness. And your mind is, almost 24 hours is inseparable. And you think that with this empty, everything is relatively existing, So, like magicians, how much he create, conjurate his horse and elephant and human beings, so many things in a small house. So he doesn't really kind of excited, or afraid of his creation. So we have to come to that point, come to that stage. Like you are now magicians. What you see is your own creations.
And you are aware.
Yeah, so you're just aware of that. So it's just we're trying to gain awareness.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah,
to all the traditions.
To have, to have faith, and faith that is backed up by the deep understanding of the dependent originations. Then it gives you some kind of, benefits. So the faith that is not backed with reasoning and valid reasoning, and the faith, so faith can be, conditioned to make you more aggressive, more you hateful. You only like this kind of way of, object that you liked, you put faith, and you don't like other things. This is almost like when you have so excited about the Chinese food, and you hate, Thai food. So because you are just, trained into this eating, So you don't have any reason to hate others, but because you like this, that makes you hate others. Yeah. So sometimes it's more reasonable to faith in food than to faith in God, So this can be changed. If someone says, this, try it. So you can say, try the Thai food, and you try. Oh, it's not bad. You can just continue to eat. When you have your, faith devotionals, there is no taste, but there is no possible you can change it. So this is a big problem, right? But that's become very normal, very.
Yeah, sadly, yes.
Yeah.
It will become very fanatic.
So when there is taste, you can, find another taste. But there is no taste, you cannot give it up, and then it's a big problem.
Yeah, when it is pure faith,
yeah,
it's very difficult.
So this is why we have to understand what is the cessations of suffering, and where, in what condition, in what sense you understand the cessation of suffering. So, and that cessation, is it independent from your existing, or that cessation of suffering is independent from your conditional body? And we say no. So, and then the text also mentioned that, the example is Shariputra. Shariputra, he attained, he gained the liberations. He experienced the nirvana, cessation of the suffering. But he's still breathing, so he's alive. And how is it possible? So this is the kind of this is why it's going through the more detail. It's very, very essential, critical to have, to keep your faith in uncontaminated. So this is like Chandrakirti says, in this way, you thought there is the water in that mirage, and you are convinced there is no water. Therefore, you can say, I have direct experience, no water. And someone told there is no water, but at that time you don't believe it. And then when you reach there, you experience directly no water. And you can also say, I have experienced his word, no water. So that no water is relatively, it is the reality for the individual. Right? So directly experience the traveler likewise. The conventional designated absence and non-perceptions as directly experienced. So this what you're trying to say is conventional designated, conventional realities, which absence in intrinsic, and ultimately not existing, and ultimately conventional realities are ultimately not perceptible, not knowable object at all. So that's saying that this can be experienced directly. The conventional, for example, color, smell, taste, textures. With eye consciousness, yes, color is the reality. With air consciousness, sound is reality. And now, so all these are reality with relation to the subject when it comes to the ultimate. And all of them is not true at all. And objectively, the color that you accepted as the reality is conventional. Conventional. Just proof of eye consciousness is the, is the proof of existing of the color. Color is the real, with this eye consciousness. Sound is real with this air consciousness. So, the color is, proven to be real by the ear, the eye consciousness. Sound is proven to be real by the ear consciousness. Now, if you say, is sound does exist objectively, can this be objectively groundable? Can this be objectively findable? And then says, no. Those reality, those real color, sound, smell, taste are objectively not findable, objectively not an object, not knowable object. So that, that no objectively existing, not ultimately existing can be directly experienced. That absence of the, objective nature, absence of intrinsic nature of the conventional reality is existing, is depending upon conventional reality, right? So you cannot say the rabbit horn, absence of rabbit horn is the ultimate, no. So as rabbit horn is not conventional, not exist. So their absence is not ultimate truth, So color exists, sound exists, So exists in what, in what sense it exists, in the relation it exists. The color is existing in the relation of eye consciousness, So then says, so the color existing is with relation to the eye consciousness. Can color exist by itself? Say no. Because their existing is relying upon, depending on the eye consciousness and sense power and the light and space. So eye sense power cannot represent the color, and space and the light, each of them, could not represent the existence of the color, but it exists with that, in relations. Like reflections of your face in the mirror is existing, depending upon mirror and your face and your relation, the contact of that. But the reflections does not exist, independent from the mirror and not independent from the face. Or mirror is not representing the reflections. Your face is not representing the reflections. It's only in the contact of that it exists. So therefore, their ultimate not existing is truth. Their ultimate not existing truth is not going to annihilate the conventional reality. Right? It's still coming back. Relatively, yes. Ultimately, no. Right? So there is emptiness not going to, not have a damage on conventional reality. Conventional reality is the proof of emptiness. So that emptiness is existing, with relation to the conventional reality. So it is emptiness, not independent, like liberation is not independent from samsara. Right? So designated absence and non-perceptions as direct experience. Because of this, there is no contradiction with truth of the worldly convention is calling the cognition of non-perceptions. So worldly conventions in calling cognition of non-perceptions, they are in all this conventional reality, in one sense, they are also non-existing. Like magician illusions, they exist, in the context of the magician and audience, right? And in one sense, those horses and elephant that you see between you and audience and the magician, in one sense, they are not reality. They don't have any essence. Saying that this elephant can, step on you, or this elephant can be escaped from this, hole, can this, do you need to close the door when the elephant plays, in the magician? So if you open the door and it will escape from it. So this is saying, anything that is the real is is existing of that is in a very tiny manner, in the context of the subject, So they are also not real and not exist at all, in the ultimate way. So now here, and another word is, there's many theory, many logic to disprove the existence of anything that you see and smell. There's if you count the logic, the theory, so how many theory of existence, how many proof of existing of color, sound, smell, taste, textures? There's not much. The eye, the ear, and tongue, and the body. These are the a single object, single subject. That with that you say, yes, they do exist. And now, and how many reason and logic to proving these are not real, the countless. From through the physics, and the quantum levels, and and if you theoretically in objective nature or intrinsic level, they don't have any real existing. So there are few, the reason or few, conditions that accepts the conventional reality is existing. The many reasons says they have no real essence. If the democracy world, so then there's there's not much people who could vote the existing of the color, sound, smell. And for the color, nose and smell says no, we don't know if color exists or not. So only the eye says yes, it exists. So if the smell and who vote for existing of the smell, and only the nose, tongue says I have no idea. So that's much. That's what, like, at the very, very tiny manner, a very, small number. From there, the conventional are existing. So this is why we say it is unreal. It is unreal, because there's so many reasons to disproving the existing of that. So now here, extensive explanations. So now returning to the experience of the cessations itself, since in the event of this, severing of the continuum of the aggregates, since in the event of severing the cutting or end of continuum of the aggregates, there would be no one at all. So if someone thinks the cessation of the nirvana is attained when everything is, discontinued, everything means your form and your consciousness, there's no body to see, there's no feeling to experience, there's no color to see. There's no smell and taste and textures, nothing. If you think that there is some kind of, in this, this way that you experience in nirvana, there would be no, no one at all. So how would there to be experienced that cessations directly? So now questions, if there's nothing, and so when there's nothing, there's no person at all, and who would experience that nirvana? So moreover, that we would invalidate any such cognitions of the end of life in such pronouncement as. Now this, the translator, this is very, very uncomfortable reading. He said, my life is finished. So it's like, in the Kyawa Sedo means this is saying that in the sutra, the Buddha Sutra, it says the Arhat, they kind of express when they reach the nirvana, this is now the birth has ceased to exist. Birth has ceased to exist. Kyawa Sedos. Changbra Chodos. Changbra Chodo means, before you arhat, before you attain. So you try hard to come closer to somewhere. So, to being friend with something, to closer to something. Now that activity is done. And birth is ceased to exist. They're trying to go closer and being, attain nirvana is that finished. And Chawa Chesos, all the activities is now done. No, there is no activities now, which means what he's saying is, all there, any kind of activities, it's always you do or say or think is to be happy, to free from some kind of suffering, and to go somewhere to experience happiness. So that kind of activities is now done. Chawa Chedos. There is no further the birth in the future. So this is how the Arhat says, Kyawa Sedos, now my birth is ceased to exist. And my, positive activities, they're trying to be closer to somewhere, to nirvana or the enlightenment is now finished. It's all done. All the activities they're trying to be something, trying to be happier, is all ceased to exist. And there is no birth in the future. Means right now, all the suffering is done, finished, and in future, there is no sign of anything coming. This is the Arhats, they express like that. Yeah, so this Joseph translator says, my life is finished. Oh, that's very boring.
A little dramatic.
Yeah. So when you say that my life is finished, you have to do like this. So yeah, Kyawa Sedo, so life is finished. The Kyawa Sedo means life years the birth has ceased to exist. So I have attained the perfect conduct. So trying to be moral, right now we have this, that is done, I have done I have done what must be done. All the activities is, done. I will now know existence beyond this one. Dile Sipa Shem Dile Sipa Shem. Sipa is the next cycle, From now on, there is no next cycle. So no existence beyond this one. So many times this existence is translated or we use as a cyclic life. If there was no creation of anything whatsoever, now question here is nirvanas, when there is no creations, there's no arising of the birth forever, how would, it would preclude saying things are now terminated. So it would also preclude saying that I will not be born again, since as long as there is the creation of life in the continuum of aggregates driven by the cause and conditions, one could never realize such cessations. Now Chandrakirti is saying, if you think that nirvana is the total end of your existence, so this kind of, nirvana, while you are alive, it is impossible. To this, the Buddhist realist might object that the implication of the word of the Buddha's pronouncement, I will not know another existing than this. There is no birth other than this. So it would be that he uttered that statement because he did not see his future birth. However, if one holds to this view as well, then such as the world, such as this. So in the root text, where Nagarjuna is saying the number 9, you claim, if aggregates have not ceased, through addiction cease, there is no nirvana. So now they're saying that, if the aggregate has not ceased. So the two meaning, the one saying that, like Siddhanta school masters, they think nirvana is end of the continuation of form and consciousness. So they say, if this is the kind of thing, so if this is the case, then, the Arhat who has attained the nirvana, attained the liberations, but you cannot call him, liberated being, because he's not dead yet. Because your definition, by definition, liberation is happen, in the moment, the discontinuation of the form in consciousness. So this is, in the way of argument to the Siddhanta school. And another way Nagarjuna is affirming that, as long as there's the grasping as the aggregate, there's always, grasping as self of the person. So, which means, when Buddha says, Kewa Sedos, now the birth has totally ceased to exist from now on. So even this this conditional suffering is ended. So which means, Nagarjuna saying that Kewa Sedo at the end of life is, in the Arhat's mind, there is no conceptually, conceived the aggregates of body, feeling, perceptions, and, emotions. There is no, from the Arhat mind, what they see in the body, and normally when we see we say, oh, my body, right? So Arhat is so clear in their mind when they look at the body, they see as it is. There's the flesh and skin, and then all the moistures, the heats, the airs, space. There's nothing to call I am. There is no sign of me existing in it. So they see as it is. We are seeing through presumption. More time we say, when we comment on something, we always, perceive things with, our own presumptions. Because we are the great painters, without painting, we don't say, right? So first, anything you want to say, you just paint. Oh, this is my way, it's red. So my way is the orange. So the presumption, presumably, even something that directly seeing without painting, we don't express, we don't perceive, we don't, apprehend. So the grasping of the aggregates, the form, the feeling, and that, conceptualization is totally ceased there. So as long as there is the grasping of the aggregates and feeling, there is always the grasping of self, or I am. As long as there is the grasping of self, or I am, there is, there's attachment, there's aversions. So when there is anger and attachment, there is karma, inevitably. So this is saying, even, when your mind is not free from that grasping of the aggregates of the form, but you, through the meditations, for temporarily, you may be avoid all the delusional mind for a while, a day, a week, or for a year. You are not liberated, because your mind is still bound with the grasping of self, a person, a phenomenon. So if aggregates have not ceased, it means now in these traditions, when you read this, that means, as long as there's the grasping of the aggregates is not ceased, so your mind is not free from afflictive emotions. Right? In the scriptures, it is said, when the aggregate cease, there is nirvana. This occurs in the passage there. The utter abandonment of this suffering. So they're complete. What's it? Dispersal. Abandonment of suffering, their complete dispersal, purifications, eradications, detachment from the desire, cessations, pacifications, and disappearance. Yeah, let me read it it's better. So it says, Doles in the sutras, first it says, yes, it is true. In the sutra, the Buddha said, Pumbaganas, by when the aggregate cease, so then there is chances of experiencing nirvana. So in the sutra it says, but the meaning, the interpretation of that, and also there's a dungen dimaluma,
And he also specifically point this very condition of suffering, So without abandoning this very condition of suffering, so you cannot experience, the exhaustions of attachment. You cannot experience all the pacifications of afflicted emotions. You cannot experience total dissolutions of all the afflicted emotions, and you cannot experience, the no more coming of any suffering in the future. So now the Basin says, this very condition of sufferings, without abandoning it, you cannot experience all this, the liberation, nirvana. So now, this word is a very, very kind of, Sonatic school thinks this is their best weapon, So when Buddha says, this very condition, suffering, without having abandoned, nirvana cannot be experienced. So Sonatic says, you see, this is what Buddha says. So, which means the nirvana experience, at the time of the body condition of suffering has ceased to exist, no more existing. So Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti says, so we always, this is very obvious, the Shariputtras, the Mongol Buddhas, there are so many arhats. Buddha himself, attended nirvana. So this, it is not easy to, how's that? Think that nirvana is attained, when you are totally ceased to exist. Shariputra and all there. And the line, the Buddha in the sutra, this says, this very condition of suffering, without having it abandoned, nirvana is not experienced. So this is same, the aggregate has not ceased, through addiction cease, there is no nirvana. So that's what Nagarjuna says. So the condition of suffering is ceased. The first year, first year I just go to the point. This condition of suffering, this body is, the body, the concept of body, of feeling, thought, perceptions, all of them is not emptied intrinsically, there is no way you can attain nirvana. This is what Buddha meant, When you attain arhat while you are alive, and your arhat's mind is, not have any conceptualized, form of the body, feeling, perceptions, and the emotions. In the arhat minds, we have, when you look at the body, it's my body. When you feel something, oh, my feeling. So arhat do not have in their mind the conceptualized form of the aggregates. So as long as you have not, empty the intrinsic property of the aggregates, no nirvana is experienced in this very condition of suffering. So that's the one. And another thing is, first the says, what do you mean by condition of suffering? What do you mean by condition? If you are referring, this body is the condition of suffering because this body is still under the influence of afflictive emotions, then you have no, by definitions, this is not the condition of suffering, arhat's body, because there is no any influence, afflictive emotions within in the aggregates, in the arhat's body, arhat's feeling, arhat's perceptions, because that, it eliminates all the afflictive emotion, even the seeds. Their mind is totally set free from even the seed of the afflictive emotions. How can there is the influence of the afflictive emotions? So, so this body is given the name and condition of suffering with afflictive emotion, and then one part of the definitions, influenced by our afflictive emotion, that is not, it is just lacking that part. Definition is not there. So the Arhat, Shariputra's body, you cannot say it is a condition of suffering, because the Shariputra's body is not experiencing anything, the influence of the afflictive emotion, because the Shariputra's mind is totally free from afflictive emotion, even the seed of the afflictive emotions. So the definition is not there. So you cannot say Shariputra's, without his abandoning his body, he cannot experience nirvana. Right. So the Siddhantika school says he was pointing at this present body, without abandoning this condition of suffering. So, and the Chandrakirti says, maybe he's referring to your body, So your body is still under the influence of afflictive emotion. This very body is, without having abandoned. So I think you have to think, for example, if you have the water bottle, so you keep that water in the bottle for a long time, there's some kind of dirty inside, there's some contaminations. And he said, without having get reading the dirty water, I cannot have any water in this bottle, in the bottle. So what do? You throw the bottle or you just wash it. So by definition, this bottle is dirty because of the dirty substance with that body. Does not mean to get rid of this dirty the bottle. That does not mean you have to break the bottle. Right. So this body is known to be conditioned of suffering because of, is a combined, it is a condition of suffering because it is the conditional, by afflictive emotion, and it is influenced by the afflictive emotion. But together, that's called condition of suffering. So the definition, full definition is not there with Arhat body. Arhat body is, there's no influence. So how can you say this is the condition of suffering? And how do you know the Buddha's, when he says, without having abandoning this condition of suffering, how do you know, Arhat, Shariputra's body is the condition of suffering? How do you know the Shariputra body is influenced with afflictive emotions? Yeah, so then Siddhantika has to go take a rest. Come tomorrow early morning, 4:30. So in a fresh mind, then try once again to read the sutra.
So how do they explain Buddha's body?
Buddha's body?
Yeah, so Buddha was there in physical form, so he's still not in nirvana for them.
Yes, that's why. Yeah. So that's why they kind of, in the nirvana means when the time in the Kushinagar when the Buddha parinirvana. So that's the achievement.
So before that he wasn't.
Yeah. So I think many of those temples you see, there's the worship in the shrine room. So there's a Buddha parinirvana. So that is the final achievement. That's nirvana.
So for them, the Buddha during his life, like he said, he didn't achieve nirvana,
No.
Even in the enlightenment.
So he still carries the burden of the karma and afflictive emotions. That's why sometimes he gets sick, there's the moment that Buddha, the start in his feet. So, and then there's the time, the moment that Ananda has to give the massage on his shoulder. There's some kind of shoulder pain. So these are, says Sudhadeva Bhavashika goes, this is the sign, Buddha is still with conditional suffering. Anything that's changing, So I think they should know their ball and their robes also conditional suffering because they keep changing, So this kind of, is something that is, they're quite convinced in their view, because they think this is, it's logically, theoretically, it has to be like that, So what is the misunderstanding? How this misunderstanding that nirvana has to happen, through the eliminations of the existing of the form in consciousness. So the, one thing that is this, because it's the condition of suffering, it has to be ended. Another thing is when Arhat die, leave their body, so they have abandoned the condition of suffering. That absence of, no condition of suffering, and there's no future coming. So they say, oh, that is the end of condition of suffering. So end of condition of suffering, this is because it is the past. Like usually this is, today is the Friday, when the Thursday is ended. Thursday is ended. The end of the Thursday is non-existing. The past is non-existing, future is non-existing. So it's kind of the past of the Thursday means it's by itself is the independent unit. So when you look, for example, when you look in the hour and the time, there is no independent end of the Thursday. When the Thursday, the moment, the midnight, 12 o'clock, that's the end. That very moment end is the beginning of the Friday. So there is no independent empty, the end of the Thursday. Right. So like when the, when the barley seed continuously changing its form, when it's totally ceased, is all potential. And that moment, the sprout has manifested. So there is no independent, the end of the seed. So that is cool because they think the past is non-existing. So the past of the conditioned suffering and no conditioned suffering is coming in the future. So they think there's some kind of independent space and total non-existing is there. So when you reach there, and that is your final achievement. But still they have a difficulty to say there is the person who is experiencing that final achievement because there is no consciousness, no form.
I don't quite understand one very subtle point here. This whole thing is a description of how nirvana is not really a separation from samsara, but what you could say you lose a sense of relativity, of right and left, big and large, of duality, of reference even. It's kind of a referenceless state in an absolute sense. And that you don't need to die to experience that. But the final achievement for Buddha did come at his death. So that kind of suggests that yes, there is some kind of contamination of the body that prevents you from full enlightenment. So there is some limitation. Even if you can realize a state, a very incredible state of cessation of suffering, like you're saying, Buddha still had to have a massage and this kind of thing, but at death he achieved the full enlightenment. So what held him back from being fully enlightened in the body? That's my question.
Yeah. So here I think nirvana or the liberations. First we have to understand liberate, escape, freedom. So if you want freedom, or there is the freedom, there is, something that is bondage, something that is influence, something that is a constant, bothered by actions of afflictive emotions. So now the freedoms, first the freedom means to you is no more suffering. Then suffering here is suffering, discomfort, dissatisfaction is suffering. Or you are referring to suffering like, the cut on the skin, or the suffering that says if the water is too hot, are these a suffering? Buddha says this has to be abandoned. No? Or this mother says it has to be abandoned. Don't burn your mouth. So Buddha did not say it. So the suffering is mainly something that influence or impact or under the force of the afflictive emotion, the karma. So this has to be understood, and the origin of that has to be abandoned. So all the arhats and Buddha has abandoned all the influence, the impact from afflictive emotions. So they have totally escaped from the conditional suffering. So that the freedom is not only freedom from the present suffering, they're also freedom from the future suffering. So now the Chandrakirti is saying, all the arhats, including Buddha, has attained nirvana, attained transcendence of the suffering, transcendence of suffering, because if the suffering is what you meant as conditional, that means karma and afflictive emotions. That if you think the suffering is, suffering that you're trying to free from is heat, cold, wrinkles, so the gray hairs. If this is saying, no, this is the nature of the body. Once you're born in this body, just go like that. So in that case, conditioned suffering is in the tree, conditioned suffering in the rock, conditioned suffering in the water, conditioned suffering in the cloud. So, so then every born from the cause and the conditions are in samsaric suffering. So if you are suffering, the refrain is something that is annoyed, bothered, irritated, by the afflictive emotions and their influence. So that you're trying to free from. So once you free, if you go to the hot weather, you will feel heat. If you go to the places the very cold, you also feel cold. Our hearts has to wear the warmer clothes. So, this is not talking about, the condition of suffering, free from condition of suffering, having abandoning this very condition of suffering means the, conditional things, like physically or speech or the mental activities, mentalities, which is some kind of slightly even the influence from the afflictive emotions. That is known as conditional suffering. This has to be, abandoned. This had to be end. By ending, and why? How you end this body as the condition of suffering? How you abandon? As I mentioned earlier, when the water bottle has some contaminations, to abandon that, you just, throw out the dirty water and clean it up, put new water. So you don't have to, discontinue of the existing of the body. You just simply do, influence from the afflictive emotions that cut, separate or cut with this body. So you can have this physical body. Once this was under the influence of the afflictive emotions, now this is no longer have any influence for the afflictive emotions. So therefore, the body is free from the suffering. So that depending on what kind of suffering is. Otherwise, anything that changing is in the book has suffering, cup has suffering, and everything that you see is suffering. Even the cold, the wind, The suffering is what causes the suffering, which is afflictive emotion. Then something that is still under the force of that, and that is conditioned suffering, that we can change. That freedom is the liberations. So now the Sonatic school thinks that because the Buddha clearly stated in this line, this very conditional suffering, without having abandoned this, no nirvana experience. So they say, Buddha is pointing at the body. So if you don't leave this body, you cannot enter nirvana. So, without abandoning this body as a condition of suffering, so without abandoning this bottle as with dirty water, you cannot see this bottle is clean. Once the bottle is clean, it's no longer it is the dirty. Right? So what makes this condition of suffering is this afflictive emotion associated, with afflictive emotions. So therefore, it's the condition of suffering. So you have to understand Jigdans, like conventional world, mundane world, the aggregates, appropriations, the condition of suffering. So almost pointing at one thing. Under the influence of the afflictive emotions, it's called mundane, conventional world, and the perishable in the world, or conditioned sufferings, or appropriations, the aggregates. So I think there's now we have to find out why and why it is possible, why the Siddhantika school misunderstood nirvana is only achieved after the non-existing discontinuations. So, they cannot answer the wisdom is the one that is destroying the body, right? Through the wisdom you have achieved discontinuation of the body. You cannot say, because if the wisdom is the one that is going to end this body, and preventing the new body. So then, while you are on the path, you have to experience some kind of, result, some kind of, result that you have see. More you generate the wisdom, and more harmful to the body. So and then you have no reason, and then why, through the wisdom, discontinue the condition of suffering? Why it is preventing the coming of the body? And the second you think, once the body has ended, there is no karma and afflictive emotion to produce next body, and that is the end. Therefore, it is a non-existing. Therefore, the discontinuation of the body and mind. So that now you have to say, this is you are thinking that the disintegration, impermanence as a non-existing. How it is not possible when you finish this body. When you finish this body, maybe you have better and pure and lighter body. What preventing it? But the seed continues to bring sprout, and that continues to producing something. And there is no any prevention right now, to have new body. Because wisdom is not against it. Simply disintegrate. Death is not the prevention of the next body. So, in what reason? There's no any the valid proof, to say that liberations is only achieved when everything is done. And they also know there is no person to experience nirvana. And nirvana, the person who wants to experience the nirvana says there is no one to experience me. So I think, when you read the sutras, just only one, they have only one to cling on when Buddha says, this condition of suffering. Buddha even pointed, this present body is not simply saying there's no next birth and second existence. He also says this very condition of suffering without having abandoned non-nirvana. So they're just stuck with this line. So if the school, the teachers get rid of one student, this naughty one, get out. So does that mean he cannot come back again without being naughty? So I think that's the only one, just the sutra, not being able to, interpret properly, and then they go on this line. So total non-existing, like, for example, find a butter lamp. Butter lamp is flaming, and due to the exhaustion of the oil and wick, and once the lamp is ended, there is no continuations. So the lamp every day, so, achieving then that nirvana, non-existing. So I think they should more, instead of praying to the nirvana, so they should, it's the final, wherever you see the end of the lamp, the wick is just exhausting. Oh, may I attain that too? Okay. Chanjusem Joremboje, my Jeva, my Jeva, Mevanya, Kona, Tonya Tower Remboje, my Jeva, Jeva, Mevanya, Kona, Pamasim Jantam, Dada, Rotam, Tata, Toma, Chanjusem Kama, Sushi, Dadabuji, Mono, Duki, Carrera Vukovich, and on the woman, Jerezama, didn't just say about the day.
May the precious flowing light not yet born rise and grow. May the bond of no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet born rise and grow. May the bond of no decline but increase forevermore. To do all these merits, may all Father and Mother Saints and Beings have all the happiness, and may all Lord Reverence be happy forever. Wherever there are Bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. O powerful Chenji Tenzin Gyatso, remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you very much.